Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our weekly STEM communication talk with this week's title being How to Speak Corporate, Essential Corporate Communication Skills. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this whole STEM communication program is made possible by a grant from Burroughs Welcome Fund. This is a career guidance for trainees grant. We're so grateful to have that funding to be able to run this program for all of you. So big shout out to our friends at Burroughs. And a couple side notes as well. Next week, we will have Dr. Stephen Hurd from the University of New Brunswick talking about communicating with many audiences through writing. And some of you may know Dr. Hurd through his really interesting blog called Scientists See Squirrel. So we're looking forward to that. Be sure to join us next week. And then next week was supposed to be the last one, but on December 10th, we're going to have a reschedule of Deborah Willis's talk on collaborating across diverse teams. Again, Deborah Willis is from the University of Michigan Rackham Graduate School, and she is manager of their Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Certificate for graduate students there. Now let me introduce today's speaker, our own Dr. Gary Kohut, who is Professor of Management at the Belk School of Business and also Graduate Program Director of the MBA program here. Dr. Kohut teaches both undergraduate and grad classes in management and communication, and his research is on business communication. Amongst his many publications, he has co-authored 3 books specifically on communication, business communication, a functional perspective, contemporary business report writing, and Right to Win, which is what we all want to learn to do. He has also worked with both regional and national corporations on their communication strategies. So welcome, Dr. Kohut. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jill, very, very much. And good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I know that there are many competing demands on your time, but I want you to know how much I appreciate your being here. I get excited talking about these qualifications, these demands that we have in the workplace today. Because as you know, in corporate America, we're engaged in a evolving type of environment today. And I want to really touch base on what are those key parts of that evolving nature. So today we're going to be talking about 5 main points. Now, Christine, I'm going to say 5, but I want you to just remember how you would react if I said today, I would like to talk about 25 main points. So remember that, because I'm going to bring that up in a little while. So we'll talk about business communication and some tips to communicate more effectively. Clearly, we need to talk about presentation skills, listening skills. How do we build trust with our colleagues? How do we hone these relationships that we develop? And then we'll end on the qualities of a high-performing team. And then I have something a little special at the very end that I wanted to add that I'm going to keep a secret right now, if you don't mind. So let's talk now, if you will, about business communication. A number of years ago, Harvard Business School looked at their MBA program and said, it's sufficient, but we can improve it. As many of you know, a lot of business programs are quantitatively inclined, okay? But what Harvard saw was the need to bring in more soft skills, the communication, the negotiation, the building of relationships, conflict management, and that. So you see here a survey, and again, this has been replicated time and time again, in terms of the most in-demand soft skills that we have today in the workplace. We're not talking about what educators are thinking. It is very, very much centered on what people who are going to be hiring you are interested in. So they want you to be an effective communicator. They want you to be organized, an effective team player. We want you to be punctual, which is really important in this day and age. And we want you to be a critical thinker. So we're going to do a little bit of exploration of what we mean by this word communication, because it's broad. It's very, very broad. What we're looking at is a cacophony, a conglomeration, if you will, of a lot of different skills. Listening, the ability to observe individuals and interpret messages, nonverbal communication, we'll touch on that in more detail, but the ability to be clear is something that we really focus on. Now, what separates corporate environments from educational environments is that if you're unclear in the corporate realm, we can walk out on you. Okay? I mean, time is money. In education, we are a lot more understanding, a lot more flexible, but I want you to understand, I don't think Destiny, when she writes a document, maybe I'm wrong with this, and let's say that you write a memo or you write some kind of business letter, I mean, do you read it again and again and again because it makes you feel so good? No. In business, you get that opportunity to hit something right away. We want to be concise. We want to be confident. We want to be personable with individuals. And above all today, more than at any time in the work environment, the ability to be patient. You start seeing the impact of COVID-19. I was working with an organization yesterday. We've been working together for several months, and they have fought very hard to maintain that face-to-face environment. But they've looked at the numbers and they've said, you know what, we're going to have this work from home, which has an incredible demand from the employer's perspective of how do we have Ms. Payne feel connected? How do we have Ebony feel that she has a voice of what's going on? Or Heidi or Gautam? These are the things that we need to start looking at. To do this, we need to recognize just out of the gate some of the research that was conducted out of the University of Southern California, Dr. Albert Mehrabian. He said years ago, and we still hold this to be true, that the bulk of communication, how we convey meaning, is largely nonverbal, our body language. For example, if I said, Christine, don't worry, your job is safe in this environment. So I've said that to her. But if I put my hand on her shoulder and it's doing one of these things, don't worry, Christine, your job is safe here. You understand we're faced with, do we judge the actions or the words? Well, let me answer that right now. The actions speak a lot louder than words. So we need to be mindful of how we come across, from something as a simple handshake to our eye contact. We'll get into that again in more detail. In business, our goal in preparing documents, business writing, if you will, is centered on 5 goals. The first one is we want to make a good impression. So let's talk about that a bit. Abhishek, Saturn Corporation, when they were around, sent out a 4-page single-spaced memo that explained a change in their compensation plan. Abhishek, would you read that?
Unlikely.
I'm with you. But you know, it impacts your pay. You probably need to read it. But chances are you're not going to pay attention to the detail. You see, what a good impression, what we're talking about is length, white space, organization. You know what that is like. If I were to send you an email right now that's 5 pages, you had to scroll and scroll and scroll. I mean, think about how you would react to that. Now, that's an extreme, isn't it? But even today, anything beyond a page on email, we want to back away from. Short. So we also need to understand the structure of our writing, what's important, what isn't. And then we want to be able to find, understand, and most importantly, retain information. So let's talk about that a little bit. Sarvani, how many days are there in November? What are you doing right now? Are you looking at a day timer?
No, I'm unmuting actually. It's 30.
So don't we have a mnemonic device that we've used in the past, right? The 30 days past September, April, June, and November, all the rest of 31 except February, 28 or 29 in leap year. And all of that works until I came to North Carolina. And in UNC Charlotte, in my very first class, this is what I saw. I didn't know what that was until it was explained. This is a way, a coded or shortcut way of determining the months in a year. And you know what? It works. Now you look at something like that. Catherine, do you eat bologna? Ms. Buck?
Not usually.
Okay, well, let's just say that you do. Okay, you walk through the grocery store.
Okay.
Do you have this little jingle in your head? Oh, my bologna has a first name. It's Oscar. My bologna has a second name. Come on, Daria. It's Mayer. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, come on, Destiny, because Oscar Mayer has
has a way with Bologna.
There you go. There you go. So now what you have done is you've created this incredibly powerful ability to recall. Whether it be an acronym, whether it be a little jingle, one of the things in business that we want to see very quickly is how can we increase the stickiness of information? How can we increase the memorability of information? And to really look at that in more detail, I want to give you the test. This is the test for all of business communication. Jennifer Bosworth, have you ever taken chemistry?
You know, I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and I'm back in grad school. I've never taken chemistry.
Well, I bet you know the answer to this.
Uh-oh.
What is that when you put a piece of paper into a solution that differentiates an acid from a base? What is that test called?
It's a pH test.
What do you mean you didn't have chemistry?
I had basic science, just not chemistry.
All right.
And I also worked at a swimming pool for years.
Jennifer, I'm giving you credit for that one. Some of us would call this the litmus test. Let me give you the litmus test now for writing and speaking. Okay? We call this the 6 C's. From this day forward in your lives, if you're serious about wanting to venture in the corporate realm, you want to make sure your communication, particularly your writing, is clear, concise, complete, courteous, correct, and conversational. So let me just give a brief example of these. Clear. Farida, you're in charge of outfitting all of our salespeople with new laptops. Please make sure the cost of the laptops is not prohibitive. What did I just say?
You told me to get laptops for the staff and make sure they're not expensive.
Are you sure?
No.
How much are you willing to wager? Get your car keys out right now.
Oh.
You get it wrong. Okay? I'm getting a new vehicle here. But you know what? You're right. You're right. Now, some of you may be asking, well, duh. Isn't that pretty simple to make it clear? No. One of the best ways of ensuring clarity in writing is to be as specific as possible. When you say to someone, let me have it by the end of the day, when is that? Is that when I leave? You think about these things. I've got a real sad story to tell you that with conciseness, unfortunately, the more formal education you have, the worse you are with this. Okay? And you know what we're talking about. I want a 500-word essay on the leadership style of Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. What are you going to do? Word count. Word count. You know what? I'll give you 5,000 and another 500. How about that one? But in business, we use the KISS principle. Keep it short and simple. Okay? To be complete, I defer to my colleagues in accounting. They're the very best. Before a document leaves an office, they have a series of checklists. People with different eyes have to see this. Now, here's what's interesting. The number one reason why 1040 tax forms are disallowed by the IRS is not because of the math. The number one reason, they were not signed. Oops. Now you see the power of being complete. Being courteous, think about this. Get that to me by Friday. Please get that to me by Friday at 5 p.m. Please, thank you goes a long way today. Being correct, oh my gosh, my last name is Kohut, K-O-H-U-T. I'd say half of my students and colleagues will use C versus K. I'm looking at some of your names. I think we have something in common, do we not? Yeah. It's important to be correct. Not for any other reason that it helps to build that relationship with a person. And then we want to be conversational. Conversational means you want to use the language of your profession. Okay? In engineering, if you're talking about Fourier theory, that's one thing. You're not going to be talking about that in English necessarily. Can you use the jargon, the specialized language from one field to another? So these 6 C's. Now, let me give you a little tip. If you have a choice between being concise or being, let's say, courteous, Andrew, do you feel the heat coming on right now? I'm putting you on the hot seat. Being concise or being courteous, which one do you think is more important, more often than not? You have been muted, my friend. You want to unmute.
I think concise may be more important. Yeah.
You know, Andrew, you're about half right in terms of the polling I have taken, but I want to give you the other side of it because it's courteousness. It doesn't matter how economical you are with words if you tick somebody off. So we know the value of relationships work with individuals is very much connected to our writing and our speaking. Yeah. Is it amiante? Amiante?
Amiante in English, yes.
Oh, very good. Very good. Oh, I love that name. Oh, I like that name a lot. You're right about spell check. But spell check is not going to get the difference between there, and there, or TO and TOO necessarily. I did some research on spell checkers, and I'm talking about add-ons, the grammar checkers, $300-400 packages, the very best on the market, very best today, catches at most half of your errors. You're still better than any package that is out there. Give yourselves credit. Let's talk about presentations. One of the skills that is demanded in the workplace, but that causes a great deal of fear and trepidation. Okay? In fact, you can read in the book of lists that people are more afraid of giving a public presentation than they are of deep water, of the hairiest bugs you can imagine, and you can believe this one, of death. They're more afraid of giving a public presentation than of death. Now, I've asked my students in the past, how can that be? Here was the answer. Are you ready? Because you can die again and again and again, which I thought was a great, great approach to that. You have to have a good sense of humor. You do. The key behind a powerful presentation is to make it appear as if you are in a conversation with a person. That is the model that we want to really approach. Unfortunately, many of us don't ask this question. What is your goal? What do you hope to achieve in a presentation? Is it something like this? I hope not. Putting people to sleep. Is it something like this? Yes, that is engaging. That is reflective of enthusiasm. You can't fake that today. What we need to do, though, is to understand some of the barriers to speaking, and these are some of the misconceptions or myths. Some people believe you have to be born with the ability to speak well. And I'm saying right now that's not the case. It's a skill, and skills can be taught. This is not a trait that you are born with. So we need to be open to improving. What else? You look at somebody, oh, I don't know, maybe it's I'm going to go back to Jennifer a little bit. And, you know, I see Jennifer giving a presentation, and I just think, I wish I could be like her. I look at Aura delivering a presentation. I want to be like her. Can I? Well, here's what we need to do. Whenever you see people who are speaking well, make a note of what they are doing and then try it out. Try it out because you want to be true, genuine, authentic in your style. When we think that good speakers don't have to work hard at it, think again. I've talked to a lot of professional speakers. I'm talking about people who make a living doing this. And what they've told me is they still get a little nervous. And that little bit of nervousness allows them to stay enthusiastic, frosty. So if you're a little nervous about giving a presentation, welcome to the human race. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. What is another myth or misconception is that people don't get nervous after a while. Well, you want to be careful of getting so comfortable that you come across as being mechanical. Okay? So that nervousness, again, keeps you right on the edge. And we want a little bit of it, not so much that it destroys our confidence, but you still want to have a little bit. Is it possible for some people to talk themselves out of this skill? Yeah, I can't do that. Heidi may say, I may need 3 prescriptions just to calm down a little bit, okay? Just because of the nervousness. Yeah. I mean, you look at Heidi, what is she saying in the chat? One of her favorite stage actors, nauseated before every performance. Absolutely. Despite numerous speaking occasions. There's no question. Now, some people try some of the tips I'm going to be offering you in a moment, and it still doesn't work for them. Well, don't stop. You want to be true to yourselves and find what works for you. And to do this, let's really be mindful of what Maya Angelou said that I think is very, very pertinent. She said, people will forget what you've said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. The feelings are tangible. That's what I meant. You can't fake it. it comes across. We can be found out quickly. So let's look at the two areas where many people get dinged in presentations. One of them is structure and the other is delivery. Every presentation has three parts: a beginning, a middle, and end, or an introduction, a body, or a conclusion. The metaphor that I want to share with you is to think about flying. What is the most dangerous parts of flying? Taking off and landing. So what we need to be mindful of is, how do we begin a presentation? Okay? Well, first of all, we should ask, what's the function of an introduction? And the function is very simple. You want to get the attention of an audience, and you want to create a preview of what you're talking about. We love paths to follow. So how do you get attention? You could use humor. Humor is unbelievably powerful when it works. When it doesn't work, oh, it's painful. Be cautious of that. You could use a startling statistic. Okay? According to FBI figures, women on college campuses have a 50% chance during their stay in the undergraduate programs of being sexually attacked. I did not make that up, by the way. That's a true statistic. And most of the time, it's with friends. Now, that's a statistic that's going to really perk us up a little bit. Destiny, how would you feel if I said, look, I want to share the secret of how you can become a multimillionaire in 5 years? Destiny, what do you think? Are you interested?
I will get my notebook out and start taking notes instantly.
There you go. There you go. There are many of us who will take out a cloth and wipe the drool off of our faces just because of the excitement associated with that. Now, I want to caution you here, because this preview that's coming, the preview of the body, needs to be something that's memorable, but not so lengthy that it fatigues us. If you have had the pleasure of buying a diamond, let's say you fall in love and you're going to buy a diamond for someone, that's an expensive proposition. You go to a diamond store and here's what they're going to tell you. There are 4 C's associated with buying a diamond: cut, clarity, color, and carat. I throw in the 5th C, cost. You'll notice I didn't say there are 11 points to cover. It's too many, too many. Data suggests today, in terms of the points that you want to cover in your body, to have no more than 7. And I'm going to argue right now that as time goes by, that number is becoming smaller and smaller. I'm even thinking 5 today. By the way, any of you know the most memorable combination? It's not out of business. Maria, how did you know that? How did you know that? Maria throws into the chat 3, and she nails it. She nails it. She's right. Red, white, and blue. 1, 2, 3. A, B, C. Start thinking about all of the 3s you have collected. Thank you for Toastmasters. Yes, a hearty endorsement to Toastmasters. The body has to have points that make sense, which means you talk to issues that are important to your audience. In both writing and speaking, you need to be mindful of your audience. What are they interested in? Are they biased one way or the other? If I'm looking at, I don't know, Andrew, I'm going to come back to you again. Let's say that Andrew is interested in a Lamborghini. Okay? Anybody want to start talking about the price of the Lamborghini first? Or no. It's going to scare them off. What do you mean $250,000 for an automobile? So what you do is you build. incrementally your argument so that at the very end, and I would argue price is at the end. I want him to understand that that automobile is him at any price. In fact, Andrew, I can't see you in any other vehicle. You're a Lamborghini kind of guy. You get where we're going here. That, ladies and gentlemen, will not work for people interested in a Toyota, Mazda, Ford. Okay? What we do is we bend our points to the body differently. Now, let me tell you, automobile companies have made huge mistakes. They've tried to cater to women. So here's what they said. Jennifer, are you ready? The color scheme is going to be in pastels. Oh my gosh. And the whole argument failed. Here's why. You know what women are interested in automobiles? Safety, mileage, horsepower. Please, please. This is very similar to what men are interested in. Lego tried to come out with a product line for girls. Lego, the girls were saying, look, I want to build that starship that the boys are putting together. Don't give me, my pony, a type of thing. Please adapt to our audience. So we want to talk about issues that are relevant to them. But we also want to use plain English. Years ago, when Steve Jobs introduced the iPod, people read the text. We're going to be introducing a new portable music player that can weigh a mere 6.5 ounces. It's about the size of a sardine can and boasts volume capacity, long battery life, and lightning fast transfer speeds. He didn't want to say that to an audience. Here's what he said. iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket. Yeah. He cut to the chase. That's exactly right. Plain English. Plain English. Thank you, Jill, very much. It's not just that, but we have found, unfortunately, we found this a little too late, but we're learning now, that we use and have used over the years a lot of statistics. We love statistics. But people have become, in some cases, immune. The stats just roll over. Yeah. We have found that stories are much more effective. Now, when you can combine statistics with stories, think about how powerful that becomes. Remember what Maya Angelou said, how people feel. Now, the stories have to be short. You can't go on and on and on and on. But they are really powerful at being able to reach individuals. In some cases, even bring people to tears. I was giving a talk to an organization, and I used a Budweiser video of the Clydesdales. And many of you, I love the Clydesdales. Every Christmas, Super Bowl and all of that, you're going to get that. And these are really emotional. However, this one was one that was produced during 9/11. No voiceover. The only thing you saw were the Clydesdales going up to the, let's say, the image of New York City, the panorama, and they knelt down. The horses knelt down to honor the city. That's not any kind of Photoshop. They were literally taught to do that. I had members of the audience. These are grown men and women with tears. And I joined them in that. It was that emotional. You're absolutely right, Jennifer. It is one that just creates those chill blankets. Sometimes we tend to be a little bit too wordy. And words are incredibly powerful, but they can work against us largely. So what we need to do is recognize that there are tools out there today called images or pictures. We live in a visual society. And I wanted to share with you a study that, in fact, several studies that center on, we get about, using only words, about a 10% retention after 3 days or 72 hours. And in this day and age, that's not that bad, but can we be any better? When you combine words with pictures, the retention goes from 10% to 65%. The imagery. Remember, and again, this may be a little bit inappropriate, but I'm going to use the example anyway. Maybe some of you remember the old GoDaddy commercials. You had scantily women eating these monstrous burgers and all of that, and very provocative types of poses. No one remembered what GoDaddy did. That's why we're not seeing GoDaddy these days. The only thing we remembered were the women. It backfired on them. So you want to use pictures that can really help. When we deal, for example, with, and I mentioned earlier before the session started to both Jill and Ara, that my family and I, we do a lot of animal rescue. And if we're asking people for donations, we're going to show an emaciated horse. Some of these I cannot. I mean, it's really hard for me to look at these images. But you see it. If I'm in criminal justice and I'm talking about domestic violence, I'm going to show individuals who have been the recipients of some horrific actions. Pictures speak not just 1,000 words, but 10,000 today. So we have the introduction, we have the body, then we have the summary. And here's where a lot of people miss an opportunity. Here's how they end. That's it. Thank you. And then they leave. It's a good idea to reiterate what you are talking about, what you have covered, but then ask for some kind of action to be taken. Okay? You have them open. Don't lose that opportunity. Many of you have seen people using PowerPoint, much like this. There is a significant PowerPoint group that has been labeled the anti-PowerPoint people. Look at this statistic, and I think it is fascinating. About a third of individuals fall asleep during PowerPoint presentations. And I dare say at UNC Charlotte, given the online format, it may be a little higher than that. But what I find even more challenging is about 20% would rather go to the dentist than sitting through another PowerPoint presentation. Now, here's what I think is at the root of this. PowerPoint is a visual aid. It will not make up for poor speaking. Use the information to augment yourselves, to add to yourselves. Don't read the slides to us. We can read them. Don't put too much text if you can help it. Use some imagery. Change it around a little bit. The thing about PowerPoint is that it's a great tool, but we make it too complex. So I bring in a gentleman maybe you've seen before, Albert Einstein. What did Einstein say? If you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. Keep it simple. Let me show you an example of what not to do. How about this one? Diana, 20 of the best real estate listing presentation tools. Are you ready, Diana? How exciting is that? I think I shut you down, Diana. Go ahead.
No, I am ready.
Do you like 20?
I would prefer 5.
See, Diana, you're a very nice person. Most people would probably pay attention to 5 on a good day. 20, forget that.
Yeah.
If you want to cover 20 points, think about The 5 most important is what I'm talking about. What good is covering? This is what I tell a lot of faculty when they're teaching their classes, and I've been the recipient of a lot of observations. I'll invite people to come to my classes, and I've learned something. Maybe sometimes it's important not to necessarily cover everything that you have in your slides. Maybe it's better to cover depth as opposed to breadth. And then reflecting, maybe you just too ambitious. Yeah. But there are guidelines that we need to follow. And that is a single concept, a thought or a theme per page. Be careful of punctuation. We don't use much of it. There's a 7x7 rule that I'm going to change now. Because by the time you step into that limelight, it's probably going to be 5x5. No more than 5 lines or 5 words per line. Keep it short. You want to make sure if you have lists that instead of extending your list horizontally, you have lists that are vertical. Vertical arrangement of data is much more understandable, much more memorable. But you need to make sure that your lists are parallel in construction, and that means similar in grammatical form. If you begin one with a noun, all must be. If one is a question in that list, everything in that list must be a question. Okay? Watch spelling. Can you see the error? Now you're good. Do you know why we don't use all uppercase in email? Because we tell people it's like shouting. And that's true. But I'm going to say something more than that. It is really hard to spell, or I should say, catch misspellings when you've used all uppercase. So we've talked about structure. Let's get into delivery. How important is eye contact? Single greatest quality. Don't just look at your audience. Look at the entire audience. You don't know who that decision maker is going to be. I had a very good friend of mine who shared a story with a firm in Uptown Charlotte. They were buying a $100,000 piece of software with a $300,000 service package. The rep came in and gave a great presentation. The decision maker opened his jacket, started lifting out the pen. He was ready to sign. The speaker did not look at him and went on and on and on. The pen went back in. The speaker said, you know what? If you're not sensitive to this audience, how can we be assured that your servicing is going to be sensitive to what we are all about? Everybody, move your head around as you would in a conversation. Okay? When you move your head around, it's not like a robot or a robotic gesture. The gestures have to be natural. And we know, I mean, I have a lot of my family from, let's say, Italy, for example. When they talk, they're going to use a lot of gestures. And I deal a lot with our Mexican students as well. We work with a sister institution down in Monterrey, Mexico. And, Mexicans are very emotional and all of that. It may appear that they're having an argument with someone, but there's a lot of enthusiasm. What I love about this is that there's something to learn from every culture, but you adapt to the culture. Make your gestures, your eye contact, your expressions as natural as possible. People will ask at times, what's the most important thing in giving a presentation? And the answer is credibility. How believable are you? So how can we build or enhance our credibility? The first thing is make sure you're familiar with your information. Secondly, no matter what is happening, please stay calm. Cool, calm, and collected. When I was delivering a presentation in my earlier years, in organizational behavior during my MBA work, I was the first person to speak in the group. I always like going first. I was ready to go. And guess what happened? The projector we were using, the bulb blew. I know what you're thinking. Just deliver it the next day. No, in business, you can't do that. You may not get that audience again. So you fight through that. And we delivered it without the visuals. And you know what? We did all right with that, I'm proud to say. Your use of time. You want to be very cognizant of time. Don't go over. Okay? I've never met an audience ever in business who complained about going under. Over, will complain. Then we have a Q&A, a question and answer period. And many of you have had tips in the past. I think it's important that whenever you prepare any presentation, to anticipate the kind of questions that you'll be getting. Okay? If somebody asks you a question, particularly if you're using a microphone, you want to repeat the question just so that everybody understands it. Plus, it gives you an opportunity to understand it as well. If you don't know the answer to the question, you can say that you'll get back to them. But let me caution you. How many times can you do that? If Jill asks me a question and I say, well, we didn't really cover that, but I'll answer that for you. I'll get you that answer by Friday at noon. If I do that 11 times, Christine is going to say, well, my gosh, what did you just share? That's of value or not that valuable to us. Watch your nonverbals. When somebody asks you a tough question, watch that your nonverbals don't give you away. That type of approach. Use the last question to summarize, to tie in your points. Okay? All right, let's talk about listening. And frankly, we're not that good. When I ask individuals, are we good listeners? They say, oh yeah, I'm a good listener. You're not the person who should be answering that. It's the people around you. Hearing and listening are two different things. Let's set it out there. Hearing is the physical process of sound bouncing off of your eardrums. Listening is understanding that sound. It's understanding and interpreting it. Okay? Take a look at this statistic. We listen at about 125 to 250 words per minute. But we think significantly faster, 1,000 to 3,000 words. Do you think maybe during just this talk, some of you were thinking about something else? Maybe you were distracted. That is part of what we see today in a lot of our business audiences. Don't get unnerved by that. One of my former grad assistants, who is a professor now at Chapel Hill, we've written several articles together. We're really good friends. He was interviewing at Boston College. Okay, he's a native of South Carolina. And the dean was in the audience. This is what the dean was doing. You ready? While he was talking, he called me afterwards and he said, you know what? I didn't get the job. And I said, well, be careful because, you may be misreading the nonverbals. They offered him the job. Don't let the audience distract you. It's hard because we're looking at the audience. Remember the earlier slides. Just don't let them derail you. So what can we do to be better listeners? Here are some tips. It's a good idea to ask questions during talks. It's a good idea to be engaged. If somebody says something that you didn't understand, ask them to repeat it, maybe with an example if you didn't understand that. Paraphrase what people are saying. Put their content in your own words. And I'm going to say something right now. Listening is hard work. There is no such thing as a boring topic. But what we have today are many people suffering sleep deprivation. So if you still with minimal sound, and then maybe somebody brings the voice down a bit, and maybe they talk in a monotone, we get individuals nodding off. So what do we do to combat that? Move your voice. Move it up and down. And you know what? That's what I did. You use gestures, okay? You use eye contact. You emphasize points. You don't beat up an audience, but you show them that enthusiasm. Let's talk about trust and how that's connected to listening and the building of relationship. There are 5 key elements of trust. If you want people to trust you, we have to share information, and it needs to be reciprocal. If you say something, you need to back it. You have to walk the talk. So follow through on your commitments. Yes, some people will keep a scorecard of how successful you are backing up what you have said. You want to let people know, in some cases, unable to do something. But don't leave it there, because I want to flip that third row. Instead of focusing on what you are unable to do, focus on what you are able to do. If Ebony wants to go see the next Panthers, and she asks me for tickets, and I say to her, Ebony, I am unable to get you the tickets by this Friday. You know what she's thinking? Well, when can you? So why focus on the negative? On the positives. Transparent for today, is it not? We have a very difficult time over communicating. So I'm going to say this right now. It's a really good idea to share information. Keep people informed throughout every process, just to let them know what's going on, and help them, because you're going to become a role model now. Help them practice constructive disagreement. Sarvani and I can disagree on a point, but that doesn't mean that we disagree with each other personally. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say this right now, that may be one of the more difficult skills to develop with people. We live in a time that is incredibly sensitive. It's very hard to talk about things, but we need to be able to create safe environments where people can afford to misstate something. Okay? In doctoral work, as part of our socialization, we had this opportunity of, you had to introduce yourself, and then you had to introduce everyone who came before you. Guess who was lucky enough to be last? And I'm not really good at that. However, I gave it my very best, and I still remember, because she still ribs me to this day. She is an administrator in Illinois. Her name at that time was Mary Carol Cameron. Said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Mary Cameron. She got out of her seat and she said, excuse me, it's Mary Carol Cameron. What do you do? What do you do? Here's what I'm saying out of it. I apologize, and I've never forgotten it. Okay? One of my introductions, I mentioned there was this a little bit of an older female in the group, and I said, ma'am, I didn't even finish my sentence. She got her chair and said, ma'am, how old do you think I am? Anybody want to give me guidance on how to answer that? Okay, let me tell you what the answer is. Don't answer that. Okay? What you find is I was brought up to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am as demonstrations of respect. Different individuals interpret that a little differently. You know what I mean, honey? Honey, dear, sweetie. Individuals will say things not meaning any disrespect. That's how they've been taught. What we need to do is have a thicker skin and learn from that. How do we build trust? The trust of others in us. And part of this, I think, is very much connected to face time, being around individuals. So you become more known than unknown. You want to be able to build a work track record that's impeccable. You meet deadlines and you do good quality work. Let it follow you, that reputation. You want to make your work visible today, which means if you ever get an opportunity to explain what you're doing on a project, don't back away from it. One of the ways of improving your presentation skills is by practice. One of the ways of building trust in you via others is to share what you're doing, but to give others credit that you're a team member. You're not just flying on your own. You see that last cell there about fostering cultural understanding? Look how much difficulty we are having today with that. Can men and women work together? Well, I mean, if you look at a lot of the data in terms of some of the inappropriate behaviors, maybe we're not seeing that. How well do we know the Chinese? We know in your lifetime, India is going to surpass China in population. There's a lot to learn about India. And one of the facts is that it is not a unified country. There are different groups within India, and I have Indian colleagues who are educating me. Even at my age, education is never finished. Be interested in individuals. We had a Charlotte Mecklenburg school teacher ask a young man, in fact, the entire class, to do a report on countries. And she gave one of her students Africa. The student raised his hand and said, "Excuse me, there are a lot of countries in Africa. Which one would you like me to take?" Her response was, "I told you to take Africa, you'll take Africa." His parent, one of my colleagues, went up to the teacher and asked for an explanation. And the teacher said, "Look, maybe at UNC Charlotte you can run the show, but here, this is my class." She was just oblivious to it until you start looking at the results of geography tests. And here's what we have found. We gave geography tests to current high school students, high schools, and the teachers in high schools. Anybody want to guess who did the worst? Yeah, the teachers. The teachers. Yeah. So Farida, you're absolutely there. Let's look at what it takes to create not just a team of individuals, but a high-performing team that gets noticed. And there are 5 ingredients to this. One of them is that trust. Now be careful with this, because if you see on the slide, there is an amplification effect with trust. And it goes this way. If you don't trust your employees, you probably will monitor them a little bit more closely. And you're going to detect minor mistakes, transgressions. What does that do? It makes people more cautious. It leads us to trust individuals less, which brings about even more scrutiny. One of my students works up in Greensboro, and her job for American Express is to monitor the internet access of all employees. And you know what, Heidi? Monitoring that Amazon delivery is not a work-related function. You're going to get terminated. How would you like that job? So people who to a large degree may not have computers at home, or maybe they don't have Wi-Fi or anything like that, what they're doing is they're being penalized. I think we need to become a little bit more liberal with this, but let me caution you. Whenever you access email or the internet at UNC Charlotte, understand that we store all of that information, and we store it for 10 years. That came out of a lawsuit at NC State. 10 years. So be careful of what you put in email. In addition to trust, we need to have a sense of optimism. And isn't that challenging today in this environment? I had the pleasure of having a pretty lengthy conversation with Hugh McCall, the former CEO of Bank of America. Here's what he told me, and he asked me to share this with every group, particularly students, and so I'm excited to share this with you. Here's what he said. He has never met a successful person who wasn't an optimist. You have a choice. Glass half full, glass half empty. What we know is that optimism is catchy. It's a great way of energizing individuals. But I'm going to tell you this, pessimism is also catchy, and it's popular to be negative today. I lived in Chicago for several years, and I can tell you this, every bar at 5 p.m. was filled. You know what people were talking about? How they hated their jobs. Don't be one of them. Don't. I implore you. There's a lot going on. That's wonderful. Is it possible to have enjoyment? Millennials are coming into the workplace today, and Gen Z, and at the very top of their minds, they want to have fun at work. Wait a minute now. I said work. You can't have fun at work. Work. What do you mean, Jennifer? I'm reading your lips, for crying out loud, and you're disagreeing.
I am disagreeing. You can absolutely have fun at work.
Love that. I love
If I
that.
didn't, I would have left a long time ago. And I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm not even millennial or Gen Z. I'm a Gen Xer, and I still want to have fun.
I love it. And you know what? I think that's a thread that can connect all generations. Who's going to say no? Christine, are you going to say, no, I don't want to have any fun? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. What we have to do is be creative with this. Even online, you can be creative with fun. How can we do that? But maybe having icebreakers of one type or another. Have you ever had a cat walk across your screen while you're speaking? Instead of getting unnerved, smile at that. You have seen, maybe through Bloomberg News or the Wall Street Journal or any of our most prolific news gathering organizations, high-profile people get interrupted by children. Smile at it. There you go. Smile at it. Why? Because it sets the tone for everyone else. They're looking at you to see whether they can enjoy that or not. Empowerment. Empowerment. Give individuals the autonomy, the independence to do things. And even more importantly than that, give people opportunity. This opportunity here that Jill is offering is huge. Jill and Ara both are interested in your grant. They didn't have to apply for the grant. You could see their interest in giving individuals an opportunity to expand themselves. This is huge today, because when you don't see this, then you start to become negative. Then you start to become pessimistic. Then you start to think, as some people do, you go to work, you get paid, you die. Oh, excuse me, you pay taxes and then you die. I mean, is that life? No, no. We go around once. Let's make this a function of continuous learning. So we've seen today our discussion of communication skills and their value in the workplace, presentation skills, listening, trust, and developing that collaborative, high-performing sense of teamwork. But I want to talk, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to add something that was a little bit of a treat. Happiness at work. We are seeing that people who are happy at work tend to be more productive, tend to stay. And when you start thinking about the cost of people leaving, the data suggests it's about 1.5 times the salary of a person. Okay? And then you even gamble at trying to find somebody with equal talent. So what is there that helps create happiness at work? Part of what we are seeing today is this concept of work-life balance. I want to change that wording to work-life integration. I don't think there is a balance. I know there's great guilt on the part of a lot of individuals, because if I said to a large degree, oh, let's say you have to attend a critical meeting at work, it just happens to be on the evening of your child's first birthday. What do you do? Here's what a lot of professionals are doing right now. They're going to work and they're celebrating that birthday a little bit later. You find ways of making it work. Okay? A 1-year-old, the child does not really care about the actual day. You know, how many toys am I getting? How many of these things am I getting? We need to be sensitive to that. We need to be sensitive to the challenges, the opportunities of tasks, but also to the diversity that people present. Now, let me argue a view that I have, because I grew up in an inner city where I was the minority. We talk a lot about diversity with respect to age and gender and ethnicity and so forth, and truly they are aspects of diversity. But what I have found to be the most challenging is a diversity of thought and opinion. People who disagree, how do you handle the disagreement? We have to be big enough, professional enough to allow that to happen. Yes, we want financial security, but we also want these social connections. So what we are finding today in this COVID-19 environment is that organizations, to secure happier employees, we are having more touch points, more. But they're not 2 or 3 hours in length. They may be 15 minutes. We're talking about a story. Maybe we're going to have a little icebreaker. Maybe we're going to have a bit of fun. The last read that you really enjoyed, or a movie you have seen, just to get to know people. Why is this important? Because what we have linked happiness to is a 12 to 20% increase in higher productivity. We're selling more. We're more accurate. It improves the bottom line with respect to not just financials, but the stock price. It allows both organizations and people to be more resilient, which means if you get knocked down, you're going to get back up again. You get knocked down, you get back up again, that kind of thing. We know we tend to be more positive when we're happier, and it's just that happiness gets shared with our customer and our colleagues. So I want you to start looking at how we can not just ourselves happier, but our colleagues. Now, let me conclude before we get into our question and answer session. Be careful. Be careful with this. Because a lot of people who don't want to invest time and money will try one initiative. One size does not fit all. We need different ones and be prepared to fail. We don't bat 1,000. We're not perfect, but we want to try. We're looking for people we can depend on, looking for people who are willing to do the hard work, but we're also sensitive to the demands that people have on their time. If you are preparing yourselves for the long haul, and I mean that in the positive sense, then what you need to do is to embrace continuous learning. And I mean about everything. If I could impart upon each of you one gift that I could share with you, it would be the gift of curiosity. I don't know why. I was born with an insatiable curiosity about everything. And I think I tortured my parents because of that. I ask questions about everything you can imagine, even some of the more sensitive topics I was curious about. I'm still curious. I hope you can enjoy that as well. So I want to thank you for your attentiveness, and I want to open it up right now for any questions you might have. And please don't be bashful. Thank you, Sarvani. Appreciate that. All righty. So let me go with Sarvani. Would you like to ask a question, or would you like me to pass this to Destiny? She looks so excited.
I think Destiny can go ahead first.
Okay. Go ahead, Destiny.
I think that anytime I communicate with people that I'm trying to like pitch an idea to or just trying to communicate with, I have a hard time remaining focused and like delivering my key points. And then like trying to find a balance between presenting too much and too much detail and then not providing enough detail. And I don't know if you have any more suggestions to provide along those lines, but that seems to be my biggest problem when communicating in general. I'll either like ramble on like I'm doing now or just go off topic all the time.
You're not rambling. That's the first thing. Second of all, what you've just asked is a great, but it's a hard one to answer, isn't it? So here's a general rule of thumb. If you're pitching an idea, think of 3 points that you want to cover. Okay? 3, and only 3. Focus on those 3. Give evidence that supports each of the 3. Okay? As you are conveying that information, watch your audience. If it's 1, 2, or a group of individuals. The beauty of business audiences is that they typically are small. So you could have that personal approach. I think, as you have said, I think you're absolutely correct. I think we tend to oversell. Okay? So we try to force too much information down the throats of individuals. Do your audience analysis, and I'm sure you'll hear this in your next session on writing. You do your audience analysis. Start thinking about what they need to know, what they want to know, what they already know. And then that helps you to identify the 3 points that you want to cover. Now, there's a tendency at times, because when you get on a roll, you're thinking 3, let me add another one, or let me add another one. Don't do that. Focus on the 3. Okay? Excellent question. I compliment you with that one. Yeah.
Thank you for your answer.
Oh, it's my pleasure. All right, so in the chat I have, so if I had a bad start to a presentation and I sensed it midway, how do I salvage the presentation? Oh, that's a great question. You know, most individuals experience that hiccup at the beginning of a presentation. But then we come to face with our own. Ooh, I should have done a better job. Ooh, during your presentation, you're critiquing yourselves. It's the miracle of the human brain. We can say one thing and think about something else. Here's what I would say. If you make a mistake, let it go. Let it go. You don't have to advertise, wow, I really made a mistake there, where you start really highlighting the mistake. Just restate it. Well, that should have been 11 million, not 11 billion. And just move on. You don't have to have an editorial. What a stupid thing for me to say. Oh my gosh, I am so embarrassed. Let it go. So all of us are going to potentially make mistakes. But remember, and this is what I love about business and organization and about speaking in general, you don't have to be perfect. Your metric is that you sell the idea, and you can do that without being perfect. I also, at the beginning of every presentation that I deliver, I have mentally, I do a little mental preparation. If you believe in meditation or anything like that, I have something funny in my head. Okay. Now, if I'm talking about something serious like the escalating prices of coffins, I am not going to smile, for crying out loud. I mean, the topic has to fit what we're thinking about, but I want to be in a good mood. I promise my students I never grade if I'm in a bad mood, but I'm seldom, if ever, in a bad mood. And the beauty, it comes back to that curiosity. So what I'm going to ask here is for you to reach out to other individuals. The resources that you have here, I am going to go, Andrew, for example, and ask, Andrew, has this ever happened to you? How did you handle that? And then listen. No one has the magic formula. I don't, and I'm telling you this right now. And I've given thousands of presentations to groups of a handful to thousands of people. And I can tell you, I've made mistakes. You just roll with them because there's always tomorrow. All righty, what else? All right, so I see we all make mistakes in our chat. How we plan and prepare to recover from them. You may not even be aware that you've made the mistake. You get my point. I had a speaker come in, an outside speaker in my class, and I was teaching a course. It's one of the new courses, one of the first courses in our MBA program. So I was talking about a topic, and one of my students raised his hand and said, Dr. Kohut, I have a slightly different way of looking at that. Would you mind if I put that on the board? In my class. You know what I said? By all means. It doesn't matter who's teaching as long as we're learning. The speaker at the very end, when everybody left, asked me, why did you do that? I've never seen anyone do that. Maybe I'm just comfortable with this concept of learning, and I've realized, like many of you have learned, that you can learn more in some cases from each other than you can from me. And that's what it's about. Now, I get a question from Maria about filler words. There are, why do we do that? Let me suggest, many of our international students, ironically, don't have a problem with this. And it's because they know what they want to say. That's the problem with filler words. We're searching for what we want to say. And while we are thinking about it, how do you handle this? Well, let me show you something that we did in my doctoral work that worked. We had to give an abundant number of presentations. And some of us had some issues with like. So we, within our group of friends, here's what we said. Aura, I would like you to count all of the examples of filler words that I use. Gautam, I'd like you to count. Farida, I want you to count. At the end of class, our friends gave us these tabs of paper. If you had a large number, it meant you had some work to do. You don't argue, the rule of thumb was don't argue. If Ara said you had 83, you have something to work on. So the first step is to be aware of them. The second is to realize there's no magic wording, no perfect wording, just get the word there. And instead of a like, maybe a strategic pause can get your audience to start thinking about what you have said. Try that out. It works. Now, let me be real clear. It's all right to have filler words as long as we don't recognize them as being a distraction. So the goal should not be the total elimination of filler words. The goal is to reduce them to the level that we don't even notice them. For example, let's see. Catherine, are you ready?
Sure.
Catherine, have you ever been to Yosemite National Park?
I have not.
Oh, it's a great place to visit. My gosh, you're really missing out on a lot. Gautam, have you ever been to Yosemite?
No, I've gone through the PCH, but that was something that I missed out.
Yeah. Now, why is Destiny laughing at me, for crying out loud? All I'm talking about here is a national park for people to visit. Oops, I mispronounced it. It's Yosemite, but it looks like Yosemite. So part of what we have to do when we rehearse our presentations is to practice pronunciations. Practice them. And the beauty of a lot of this is now we have software, we have apps that can sound out terminology. Look, I don't speak great Spanish, but when I'm in Mexico, believe me, I use translation quite a bit. Because when I have my ride scheduled for 4 a.m. Sunday morning to return back to Charlotte, I want to make sure my driver is there. Accuracy is important. Very good. What else? Other questions? So we have, in some cases, individuals panicking, and because of that, maybe we will say things, maybe we'll overtalk, or we will have a pretty lengthy pause. How do you prevent something like that? Rehearsal. I cannot express to you enough of the value of rehearsing. Let me give you an example of this. We used to have a program in Hong Kong, and a colleague of mine was delivering a class in Hong Kong next to mine. We were in separate rooms in a hotel, and I walked by his room, and I saw people, they were rubbing their heads. They didn't look happy at all. And I thought, this is the beginning. How can this be? Until I looked at the screen and I saw with PowerPoint slide 1 of 250. Let me pause here for a moment. Ouch. I don't know of anyone, and I know where you're coming from right now. You're probably thinking, you know what? Give me the slides. Let me go. Because that's torture. Okay? What we have to do, if you're talking for an entire day or for a significant period of time, break it up. When I teach in our DBA program, a doctorate program, I'll teach an entire Saturday from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. Okay? Jennifer listened to me for that amount of time. So we break it up. I have a little activity. maybe something a little bit different after lunch. You chunk out your material. And you know what that does? That combined with rehearsal starts to give you confidence. Your mind is your greatest asset or one of your greatest, let's say, threats. If you can believe you can do it, you can do it. You wouldn't be here if you couldn't do it. You just have to believe in yourselves. And part of this is recognizing we're in the continuous quality improvement mode. So whenever you are finished with any presentation, whenever you have sent out a written message, it's a good idea to, at the end, privately, reflect on what you've done and ask, what could I have done differently to improve? Now understand, that does not mean you did a bad job. As I told individuals, you can get an A and still have things to work on. I'm a big believer in that. But you need to understand that nobody's perfect, at least not now. Okay? We have this great opportunity to improve, and we can learn from each other. Now, I have perhaps time for one more question, and I want to honor your time. If we don't have any more questions, very good. Now, Gautam, I know Gautam. Okay? He and I go way back. What we have is an exchange of information. What I like about him is that he's not bashful about speaking up. He's prepared. He's professional. That's what we want in the workplace today. You work on that, you take your studies seriously. This I can convince you of. No matter what the economy is doing, including a deep recession, we are constantly looking in business, we're constantly looking for talented people. You're looking at an individual who graduated 3 times. Each time during a recession. You cannot have worse timing than what I had. But I've been very fortunate to do what I love, to find what I love, and to do whatever I can to help individuals achieve success. So with that in mind, let me thank you again for being a great audience with really great questions. I'm going to turn it over to Jill, who has a few moments to share something with you. So again, thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think the only thing I have to share is to thank you for the presentation, Dr. Kohut, and to let you know that in this time when we are also Zoom fatigued, this is the first presentation I've seen in quite a while that I am leaving with more energy than I brought to it. And that is the ultimate compliment. So
it is. Thank you.
Thank you for that today. And thanks to all of you for taking time to get some professional development. I know there are a lot of demands on your times. There's a lot of stress. You're being pulled in a lot of directions. And I applaud you for carving out this time to learn and grow. And I encourage you to keep learning and growing. Take care, everyone. See you not next week, but the week after Thanksgiving.
Very good. Heidi, take good care. Good seeing you again. Everybody, enjoy.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
To you too. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.